What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Garage Topics. Got the C10 behind me. I built this in my garage, had some friends help me along the way. Go check out the other videos that I'm going to link in the description and put up top here. But if you're in the middle of a C10 swap, putting an LS into it, or thinking about doing it, this is the video I'm going to share all the secrets I learned and things that I wouldn't recommend to a friend. Let's go take a look at this thing. Quick overview here. This is actually a 1974 C10 with a 88 front clip. I've got a 5.3 Gen 3 LS in it with a 78-75 turbo. I've put 600-ish miles on it, and knock on wood, I've had trouble-free miles. I spent a lot of time making sure everything was right and done right the first time, and I think it paid off. It took a long time, but definitely worth it. All right, number one thing that I had troubles with doing this swap seems very simple, but I don't know why it was so complicated. I ran the Holley EFI fuel rails, and I have the stock truck accessory drive on this. What happens, if you can see here, it gets very, very close to the alternator. So you have to run a crossover back. You can do it in the back as well, I guess, but for ideal fuel setup, the fuel's coming in the back and going out the back. The crossover's in the front. Super tight here. Can't fit my finger in between right here. This here actually is a fuel fitting to adapt AN lines to stock GM fuel lines, and I had it laying around, truth be told, but it's what fit. I used other 90 degrees angles bits and they were too tight. This is very, very, very small and snug in here, so I had to use an OE GM connector on the other side to connect the crossover to, but it's worked wonders, and I've had no leaks or anything like that. That's my number one tip, is use that, and put that piece in the description. It's a Earls OEM GM fuel line fitting. Number two, don't overcomplicate things. The beauty of doing an LS swap on a C10 is it's a truck, and guess where the engine came from? Another truck, just a lot newer truck. So what this means is the accessory drive that runs the alternator, etc. fits. You don't have to buy a new one if you don't want to, with the exception of AC, but I'll get more on that later. The ignition coils, everything, stock. Oil pan, stock. The cross member, everything fits. You just need engine mounts, transmission mounts, and the wiring pieces to make it work. That's the most complicated part of it, honestly, but you have so much room in here to work around. This turbo kit that my buddy Keith fabbed up, I specifically wanted it away from the engine so I can touch every single bolt. It makes working on this extremely easy, and I'm very thankful for that. It's been great, but yeah, just don't overcomplicate it. If you're putting a LS into a C10, most likely the engine came out of a truck. Use whatever you can. I went a little bit nicer and used Holley EFI fuel rails and intake manifold because they look cool. You honestly don't have to do that either. The stock stuff will work just fine depending on your power levels. I upgraded the fuel injectors because I have a turbo, need a lot more fuel, but other than that, you're good to go. Next tip is the things that you're really going to need to get in and get messy with is the wiring and the fuel system setup. So let's go over the wiring first. You've got this wiring bulkhead down here that's connected to the cab. It looks like a mess because it is a mess, and it's got this weird goopy mess coming out of it too that came from the factory that way. You need to identify the main power wire and the trigger for the starter. Each year is different. You just need to check which one works for you by using a voltmeter, and that's what I did, and everything worked out fine. I actually have the power for some of the major components running from this MSD solid state relay. What this does is make life 1,000 times easier. Instead of having a bunch of little boxed relays everywhere, this bad boy gets a main source of power from the battery, has small trigger wires to turn on and off things, but then the power needed for some of the heavier duty things get distributed out on a relay without having a big mess. So I have the fans running off this, I have the fuel pump running off this, and I believe I have the inside electronics running off of it as well. Definitely recommend it to a friend. For the fuel system, it's really the tank, like everything. I end up replacing everything on this truck fuel system related. The tank's brand new. The biggest piece that you need for this truck is you really need to have a heavy duty fuel pump, especially if you're running a turbo. But if you're not running a turbo, you just need the fuel pump to be in the tank, and that will make your life so much easier. When I bought this truck, it had an LS in it at some point in time. It had an external fuel pump just sucking it up from the tank. That's not good. You want it to be in the tank. Easy way to do that 88 and up C10s, I think they're called K10s by that point. Basically, if you look up at 88 Suburban and its fuel sending unit, it directly fits in the tank, the lock ring to lock it in there, but is made for EFI, meaning you can buy whatever EFI fuel pump you want, install it in there, and good to go. If you buy a stock system and don't plan on running boost, you can probably do that as well. Holley actually just came out with aftermarket fuel hats that go directly into stock tanks. So depending on your power level, that would be a good solution as well. You just got to do that because this truck wasn't meant for fuel injection. If you try and jerry rig it, you're gonna have a bad time. So the areas that you don't skimp on with the LS swapped C10 is the fuel system and the electronics. Pretty straightforward, you just got to make the investment. Transmissions, as far as they go, I'm running a 4L80, which is a big boy transmission. Again, these trucks were made to have big stuff in them, so I didn't have to do any cutting or anything like that. It fit in perfectly. You can actually reuse the stock linkage for on the column shifter. Mine didn't come with it at all, so I ended up using a low-car shifter mechanism. Let me try and get you in here. It's very fancy. It's that chrome boy right down there. I had to make some small bends to it to get it to fit in place, but it's very simple. It just connects down there. And I'll take you inside to show you. The only thing I'm missing is I do not have the readout down here of exactly what gear it's in, but you can feel it perfectly on the column. Let me talk about this gauge cluster because that's a big thing I get questions about. These are Holley EFI gauges, and how they work is they talk directly to the ECU, which in this case I used a Holley EFI Terminator X ECU. That made this whole swap 1,000 times easier because it includes the ECU and the wiring harness. Then when you go into that and you use stock gauges, none of this will really work anymore because it's relying on mechanical inputs, like literally something spinning around or some pressure coming to it. So this is where these gauges come into play. They look great. I did have to do minor trimming around here to get them to fit in, but like minor, I mean pretty easy stuff, and just they fit right in there. It's like they were meant to be. It's like they know what they were doing. I've got miles per hour, I've got RPMs, I've got boost pressure, I've got water temperature, and I've got oil pressure. All of those are coming from the ECU. The only one that isn't is the fuel level, which they have the same style as well. What this does is it hooks up to the fuel sending unit again from that 88 and up K truck. It has like an ohm resistance reading based on how high or low the fuel is. You can actually press buttons with the instruction manual to program what kind of voltage or resistance it's looking for. All GMs use this specific resistance, and now I got a working fuel gauge. It works perfectly. So this is one of my favorite parts of the truck. The smaller steering wheel makes it a little bit harder to see, but they look great and they do their job perfectly. Again, I ran a turbo. The issue with this is that running AC becomes a little bit more complicated. I've got enough room here to have to change up the accessory drive, but I have Hooker turbo manifolds, and where they come out down there at the front is exactly where the AC compressor would be. So that's, you got to think about that. I think Holley sells a mid-mount accessory drive that would put the AC compressor up here, which would be fine and you'd be good to go, but just something to think about. I don't currently have heat hooked up. It's just looping back in and out with a water pump, but it'd be very easy to run the lines over there and put the heater box back in. If you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you watching. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more LS content and such like that. My final thoughts on this swap. I'm very glad I did it. The whole point of this swap is I wanted to build a turbo LS system. The truck almost came secondary. The truck, I found a good deal on it, and it just made a ton of sense because there's a lot of room in this engine bay to work on it. With that being said, I don't know, I've got car ADD like crazy, and like for some reason, this is the most work I've ever put into any vehicle, but this is the least amount of like emotion or attachment I've ever had to a car, or truck in this case. I've actually owned a C10 before. My very first vehicle was a C10. Maybe that's bringing back bad memories because I think it was slow, but this truck is not slow. It makes 10, 11 pounds of boost. It runs great. Check out the other video. But I'm just ready to move on. So unfortunately for the channel, or for you guys watching, I am selling it, but someone else is going to get to be able to enjoy it and make it a little bit cosmetically better. Someone can still customize it to make it what they want, but that won't be me, unfortunately. But I'll be sure to update you guys. If you guys have any questions about this video or any other videos, you can reach out to me. I've got a bunch of stuff in here about what I've done in the videos, so happy to help you guys out. Would I do it again? I don't know. If I was to do this again, I think I would just not do a turbo. Don't get me wrong, I love the truck and I love what I built here, and I love the help that I got to build this, but this truck really is just great for cruising. And one of these trucks with a 5.3, 4.8, even a 6-liter with a cam in it and just a nice transmission, plenty quick, would be more than enough to just cruise back roads on. But this thing's downright sketchy. If I'm gonna actually drag race it, I'd want to put a cage in it and stuff because it's very fast, and that's kind of cool, but I'm not feeling it with this truck. Might be feeling it with something else though that's over here somewhere that I'll make in another video. So if you're an OG or you're really into this video, I really appreciate you watching. Be sure to subscribe. I'm going to make a whole lot more content coming up. I didn't do as much documenting on this truck when I built it, and shame on me, it was a different situation. I'm making changes to that, so the next build we'll do a full documentary series on it and go through each step and how I did it to help everyone out. But hopefully this was enough insight and help to either sway you to do a swap or what kind of things you want to do or not do. Hopefully it helps someone out there. But that's all I got for today. Be sure to make sure your cat or dog doesn't get attacked by like random bees or wasps, because that's not good at all, so don't make that happen. Again, ask me any questions. Until next time, catch you guys later, and I got some stuff in store. Catch you guys later. Peace out.